And we're going to talk about foundations of the Scaled Agile framework. Scaled Agile framework version 3.0 came out a couple weeks ago, and this is the latest and greatest presentation which you can take into your large-scale organizations and help socialize SAFe within the enterprise. You can actually download this full presentation at the scaledagileFramework.com/foundations in its PowerPoint format. So with that, welcome Dean Leffingwell.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. As Jennifer mentioned, this presentation is downloadable. You can use this internally. You can mix in some of your own content. The only thing we ask is that you basically leave the content as is, because this is our standard briefing. So with that, I'll dive into foundations of the Scaled Agile framework. Be agile, scale up, stay lean. 3 good things. Why? Well, the reality is it's quite difficult for us as we build larger and larger systems, more and more complex systems that we couldn't imagine, 3, 5, or 8 years ago. And we've had Moore's Law supporting our hardware growth. Moore's Law said that basically we would double the capacity of our computing power every year or so, and they've largely done that to the point where now much of our computing resource, compared to the software development cost, is largely free. But our development practices haven't kept pace because we have bigger and better imaginations and bigger and better machines. Agile shows the greatest promise for improvement was developed for small teams. And my goal over the last 6 or 8 years has been to take the benefits of agility to the larger enterprise. We think those folks need the opportunity to experience the power and the empowerment of Agile as well. So that's what we're going to do here, is we're going to describe how it is that we thought we'd do this. For those of you who've been at this for a year or a decade or a couple decades like me, or maybe 3 or 4 even, there was a time, maybe only 10 years back, when I think we all thought we'd be operating at a much higher level of abstraction than we actually are. And we do have better tools, make no mistake about it. We have better languages, better operating systems, more object orientation, which helps us design systems that are more flexible to change. But it doesn't look like this. It's not a matter of sitting down and dragging and dropping a GUI framework on your application and have it automatically generate the code. Instead, sometimes it feels more like this. And I remember the first time I pulled this slide up or something like it in an audience, somebody raised their hand and shouted out and they said, well, at least they're co-located. So that's kind of a funny joke, but it's not that funny, really. These people can get up and go to the water cooler and chat a little bit about what they're doing. Our version is different than that. Our version is literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of developers working in various geographic regions, different cultures, sometimes different native languages, and many different platforms and just solution sets. So we have quite a disparity and quite a divergence, really, in terms of the approach that we can use to develop working software at scale. And last summer I spent some time just kind of going back to Edward Deming and reading about some of his works, and most of his focus was on statistical process control and the continuous improvement of systems, but he was a systems thinker. And he also recognized that the challenges that we have in terms of delivery, quality, productivity, worker satisfaction, employee engagement, these are really management challenges because only managers can really change the systems that our workers live in. And I've come to the conclusion, especially over the last few years with my excellent hindsight, that this is really a management training issue and a management challenge to help our managers understand the new ways of working. And as the quote says, it's not enough that management commit themselves to quality and productivity. They must know what it is they must do, and SAFe is a version of what they can do to accomplish some of those end results. Let's talk about Agile briefly. I'm reminded that we always have a choice, and whenever I sit down and talk to customers and people thinking about scaling or large PMOs that have pretty well-defined and rigorous waterfall methods, I lay out the choice, and the choice is really pretty simple, at least from this graphic. Thanks to Drew for the original version of this. The customer has a choice. We have a choice between imposing and working in a model that delivers largely indirect artifacts, design documents, requirement specifications, status reports, earned value charts, and all kinds of things that don't really measure the software that we're building. Instead, Agile gives us a different approach. With Agile, our choice is to create a small box of working software. And when I look customers in the eye and ask them a question, okay, in 1 month or 3 months from now, would you rather have some documents? Would you rather have the best guess we can come up with for requirement specification? Or would you rather have some working software? I think the basic economics of Agile, I think Kent Beck pointed this out a decade or so ago, is that if you can code quickly, and software is soft after all, it may be more efficient simply to code and learn and then amend that code, refactor the code, or move the code where we need to be rather than the time spent to try to get it right up front, because we never did get it right up front. Not that planning is bad and not that consideration is bad, but to think about you have one shot at this is a bit of folly. So we have multiple shots in Agile. We want to deliver boxes of working software as frequently as we can, every couple of weeks, a month or so, worst case. And when we do that, it's not simply a matter of the fact that the box was delivered early, the little box of working software. Rather, we have this unique economic opportunity where that little piece of deployed software goes to work for you, and it starts to deliver value. And it doesn't just deliver value in that time period. It delivers value in the time period after it and the time period after that. So the net effect is an accumulation of value. And if we look at that as the way value accumulates compared to waterfall, well, even if we delivered, largely perfectly at the end, which this slide kind of implies, there was no value in the meantime. All the value was indirect, and nothing was actually deployed. So when it comes to why Agile, I think it's really simple. Raw economics. Delivering more value early is a better strategy to produce the economic gain. And when you do that, you come up with another interesting paradigm, especially in our software world, which is that over time, all features are commoditized. So if you're in a competitive marketplace or you're providing solutions to your internal business, the capabilities that you're providing eventually become commonplace. And as they become commonplace, the opportunity for value, whether that be through differential pricing or value by differential capability that you're delivering to your business, that opportunity starts to fade over time, and the longer you wait, the less value a particular feature provides. So you have a unique combination of early value delivery at a time when that thing is very much appreciated, when those who need it can use that for market differentiation or differential pricing or entering new markets. So the Agile margins accumulate much more quickly. And again, when we look at the waterfall at the end, even in a nearly perfectly executed one, none of that goodness is there. Right? The period of time that you went without the software, without even increments of the software, was the period of time in which the capability that you wish to contribute has started to decay. So early is good, not just because it's early, but it's early and it's more valuable. And we all know you end up in a different place. I think for those of us who've been at this for a while and kind of monitored and watched software outcomes, the reality is that customers can't really envision exactly what they want. And indeed, the simple fact of deploying a system causes changes in behaviors in the business. So consequently, if you just close your eyes and take a shot at the requirements, you're going to end up in a place that's not the ideal place, even if you execute well. So consequently, the ability to tack not to what the customer thought they wanted, but to what they actually needed based upon real feedback is a material difference. And I think one of the biggest downsides to our traditional forms of development, the waterfall development model, was that we really didn't know anything to the end. I'm reminded of a program that I was engaged in 3 or 4 years ago that was very near the delivery of basically a fixed capability on a fixed schedule. And we were within a couple of months of about a 1-year development effort, and no one could actually tell because the system had not been integrated yet. We didn't even have enough integration and feedback to start to understand the defect status. So the reality is that model leaves all the risk till the end, relatively flat. Certainly learn some things along the way, and that's why it's decreasing. But compare that to Agile. Every single increment, every couple of weeks, we reduce the risk and we get that feedback that we need. So that's the basic economics of Agile. That's why we do what we do. And if those economics make sense, then I think some of the rest of the things we'll talk about make sense as well. But let's talk about scaling up. There's a variety of ways to scale. I would certainly never promote SAFE as the only one way to scale Agile. I've talked to a lot of people that have very many clever ideas, many of which are largely aligned with what we do in terms of cadence and synchronization, and even some of the words we use to describe behavior. You don't have to adopt SAFE. You can do what you will, and you have a blank slate. You can pick the basic raw methods. You can pick the books off your bookshelf or off of your Kindle, and learn and grow your own, and that's totally okay. But you don't have to. And the reason you don't have to is that that's what we've been doing for the last 7, 8 years, almost full-time engaged in the marketplace, full-time on the endeavor, almost full-time spent with customers. And we've developed this framework. It's publicly facing and free. We called it, publicly facing and freely revealed. All the ideas here are ideas that we share with you. As we learn more, we record them. And as we headed down the path, we started to think about what matters, right? We understand the core values of Agile. We understand what we value. Well, we understand the core values of SAFE, and we value program execution, the ability to execute a large program with a reasonable outcome. Alignment. Global alignment trumps local optimization every single time. So if the teams aren't working towards the same purpose, it really won't matter how well you execute the program, because you're going to execute a program that doesn't create the results that you need. And code quality is not something that's an also-ran in scale. The reality is that if you don't have extremely high endemic code quality, you won't be able to scale your application. You won't be able to scale your teams. You won't be able to scale the size of the application. You won't be able to scale numbers of users or numbers of features. So code quality is a first-class citizen in our model. I'll talk more about that in a few. And number 4 is transparency. I'd like to put trust down there, because that's what we're dependent upon. Both lean and agile, these are the paradigms that bring us here, are dependent upon trust. People need to be empowered to do their best work. In order to do that, we need to trust them, and they need to trust us back. Well, we can't build trust into a framework. The framework is a set of principles and practices, but we can build in transparency, and transparency creates trust, because when people know what we're working on and why we're working on it, and what we anticipate delivering in the near term, and why that thing is the right thing, then we'll have the go signal. We can all just continue to work towards the right goal, and understand that all of our stakeholders trust us and we trust them as well. And we achieve that in large part through providing transparency throughout the system. What are our roots? 3 primary roots. Agile development, basically now, what are we, 14, 15 years ago? Agile Manifesto was 2001, that's 13 years ago, and before that, back into the 90s for XP and Scrum and feature-driven development and Crystal methods and others. We're huge fans of product development flow, mostly as based upon Reinertsen's work in this space, and then lean thinking. Some of us have perhaps unique experience. Certainly I feel fortunate to have kind of grown up in lean, actually from a manufacturing perspective, and started to understand, what inventory really is. Inventory is basically an investment you've made that you're not sure you're ever going to be able to take advantage of. So the combination of Agile and product development flow and lean, they guide us. First release of the framework was approximately 2012. 2.0 and 2.5 were in 2013, and as Jennifer mentioned, in July of this year we released version 3.0. There's an arrow to the right. The reason the arrow is there is we're not done. How can we not be done if you're not done? Every time we're in the field, sitting next to Jennifer, I don't ever recall being in the field with a customer and not coming back with new knowledge. And as customers address larger and larger challenges and their knowledge grows, we can learn from that. So you, our customers, and enterprises that have been adopting lean and agile at scale have been a huge input, and both a recipient and a benefactor of this intellectual property, and we intend to continue. Don't have a fixed roadmap, other than probably pretty likely that sometime in the next year there'll be a new release of some kind. But that's one of the nice things about being agile, is we can live and learn, and since we are software after all, we can bend to the needs of the marketplace. A little bit about me. I always hate this slide. Basically, this is my career. I've spent my entire career working with software teams, mostly as a CEO and as a senior vice president. So I have a bit of an affinity and you know, an understanding of the role of management and executive management, and yet I've hung around with developers all my life. I really like that. There's something about their characteristics and about their interest and their instinct that I find really appealing. And of course, they're solving some of the hardest problems. So this is what I do. Intend to continue for as long as I can. However, the framework is really an aggregation, a synthesis. I think of myself as kind of editor-in-chief. And lots of folks have contributed, including our partner, Alex Yakima, who's worked with me for, I think, 6 or 7 years now, developing the framework. My book, Scaling Software Agility and Agile Software Requirements, serve also as roots, kind of some of the initial works recorded there. And if you look at the acknowledgments there are literally dozens, probably 20 or 30 companies and individuals that have contributed. And we're also fortunate to have Drew Gemlow and Richard Nasser on our team, as well as Al Shalloway, who has been a contributor to some of the concepts. Enterprise adopters, that's where we learned, and the community. And this is a relatively newer thing. Only in the last couple of years now, I've had SPCs, Safe Program Consultants. We're up well over 1,000, I think almost 2 now. And they have a very active community. As a matter of fact, just about 11 minutes ago, I had a good, sharp and aggressive SPC saying, I don't like this part of the framework. And she pinged me 4 or 5 times and came to the conclusion she made a good point. So I just did a quick edit just before I came in and did a little bit of change to the product management page based upon people's actual experience, in this case working with BAs in a traditional IT shop in a product manager role. So that's where the input comes from. Before we talk about scaling, let me briefly mention some of our thoughts and opinions on Agile methods. Scrum. Since the late 90s and probably early 2002, 2004, when the Scrum Alliance came together to start providing kind of a comprehensive approach to Scrum. Scrum has been the choice. I think last market share I saw, probably even greater than a few years before. Scrum is probably 70 or 80% used for Agile. Scrum in some cases is a proxy for Agile because it is pretty well defined. It's lightweight, right? The official Scrum Guide is only, I think, 16 or 17 pages. It works. Clear team roles. Scrumptious. Let's sprint. What's wrong with working software in a time box? Absolutely nothing. What's wrong with Scrum? Not much at the team level that I can think about. Well, I can think of one thing where it's not wrong, but it's perhaps not as complete. And that is at about the same time that Scrum was created, extreme programming came along, and there were a number of books on the topic. And extreme programming talks about the code in ways that we hadn't talked about it before. It talks about, you know, principles like collective ownership. It talks about fast feedback. It talks about test as a responsibility of an Agile developer. Really great code from really great coders. Let's use it. Let's program with it. So you'll find built into SAFe many of the practices of extreme program and some extensions in the area, for example, test-first development, which starts to bring acceptance test-driven development to bear. The latest entry to the mix in terms of things you can talk about for Agile methods is Kanban. And Kanban is the newest player, and Kanban is essentially a workflow management system. It brings visibility and work in process limits to work, and that's huge because now we really can see the work. We can see how much of it is moving through the system. We can measure our throughput and start to understand what our turnaround is. And if we think about Kanban from the standpoint of limiting WIP and managing demand by seeing demand and seeing what our flow is, now we step back and look at this chart and say, what's wrong with any of these methods? And the answer is nothing. They're all, I think, extraordinary, and we owe a great debt of gratitude to those that have moved us down this path. These all contribute to our body of knowledge. But it's not a one-size-fits-all deal. And I think our job as managers and leaders is to understand these models and others and apply them in a way that suits our enterprise the best. But as you know, or as you've seen, most of those methods don't scale natively. Scrum doesn't have roles and responsibilities outside the team. That's not a criticism, it's a fact. It doesn't worry about things like architecture or governance or maybe lean-agile budgeting. XP, I remember reading some things about XP doesn't scale. Well, it scales horizontally, there's no limit to the number of software developers and teams that you can have doing really, really great code. But it also doesn't worry about kind of intentional architecture and guidance and governance for large-scale programs or team alignment. And we need to do something a little bigger than that. I think we're in the larger enterprise and we're building bigger systems. We need to take a systems view. So personally, I think we can. And not everybody works in a small shop. Not everybody works with a group of 3 or 5 software teams, like we have here. That's pretty convenient. You can find the people, you can have an all-hands meeting, you can discuss methods and practices, and you can evolve them interactively, and you can do your work on a whiteboard. That's not the case for millions of folks, literally millions and millions of people that are stuck behind, kind of enterprise firewalls, where they don't really have access to the methods, where their software development lifecycle guidance won't allow those methods, to where there are some, I would say, some wrong assumptions about the way Agile works and the discipline and the results that you can achieve with things like non-functional requirements. And personally, I think we have an obligation. I think we have an obligation to bring the best that we know to everyone who develops software, and that's what we work towards here. And the result of that is the framework. Now, there's quite a few icons here, but there's quite a few people involved too, and there's quite a few roles and responsibilities. I'll talk briefly about each of these levels just to give you a rough overview, but we can't afford to go into much detail. That's what the framework is for. As I mentioned, it's freely revealed. It's also interactive, so each of these icons has quite a story behind it. So if you want to know more about, how product management works to create a vision, click here and read more. What do we care about? We care about results. I've always been a results-focused guy, and I think that results speak for themselves. And when you talk about culture and employee engagement and what it's like to work in an enterprise, the reality is that winning is more fun. And what we've seen is, frankly, results that astounded me initially. Now we're getting used to them. Now I've also seen, stories about 2 times and 4 times increase in productivity and that kind of thing. Well, we work at scale here, and I don't know that I've seen that. I've seen measured productivity in 20 to 50%. We see routinely 50% defect reduction and routinely faster time to market. In a way, that's the easy one. And if quality is up and productivity is up and time to market is up, don't you think the people that are doing their work like their jobs better? I know for a fact they do, and we often get emails from people. I remember one that said, "Thanks for helping restore the humanity in my career, because I'm no longer locked behind this set of requirements documents and this governance model. I'm now free to innovate and explore and contribute in a way that I always felt I could, but for whatever reason, the strictures were in place that I couldn't do that." And you needn't take my word for it. I wouldn't if I were you. I would go to scaledagileFramework.com case studies and check out some of these companies. U.S. brand names like John Deere and Discount Tire and companies like Telstra and Valpak and BMC Software. These are the folks that are achieving these results. The case studies are there. Their results are there, and I think without exception, they're all attributed. What I mean by that is somebody has a blog or an email listed there, and you can talk to those folks. But I think as you read it, you'll decide that if they can get those results, we probably can too. Let's talk more about the framework and talk about its background in Lean. I remember quite a few years back approaching a really big PMO organization, big beefy boys and girls who, make no mistake, were the ones who knew how to get software outside this company, and thinking in my Agile bag of tricks, my Scrum and XP practices, that I didn't have much of a story for them. And went back to my Lean roots and said, Lean is a more comprehensive discussion, more comprehensive set of principles and practices that can guide improvement at any level. And the House of Lean, as is attributed originally to Toyota, and there are many variants of it, but the House of Lean is described here with 5 key components: the goal, respect for people, product development flow, Kaizen or continuous improvement, and then note the foundation. The foundation of Agile is absolutely Agile teams, practitioners, and developers, and I think that's great. I wouldn't change that for the world. But if we want to implement Lean, leadership needs to step up, and they need to take an active role in that process. The goal is very simple: sustainably shortest lead time with great quality and value. And if you look at a few kind of hints to the way Lean approaches the problem, you see those on the right. Taiichi Ohno, probably the godfather of Lean, Says all we're doing is looking at the timeline from the point where the customer gives us an order to where we collect the cash. We're reducing the timeline, reducing non-value added waste. Mary Poppendieck, Mary and Tom have written, I think, 3 or 4 books on lean software development, and they said simply, figure out a way to deliver software so fast our customers don't have time to change their minds. And then I was at a Mile High Agile conference a couple years back, and Al made a comment in passing which says software problems will exhibit themselves as a delay. So we don't really have to type faster or work harder. We need to find out where the delays are and eliminate those, and our time to market will go up. Like with the Agile Manifesto, respect for people is simply a foundation of lean. There is no lean model that says we'll do all our people's thinking for them. Even in basic manufacturing work, the goal is always to figure out what the folks know that are building the product. And a few key hints here. Your customers, whoever consumes your work, and that's a little different than Agile, who the customer's generally user story. My customer might be DevOps, okay? Let's just say I'm on the development side of the shop and we're not completely seamless yet in terms of development and deployment. So when I think about DevOps, I think about don't trouble them, don't overload them, don't give them huge batches in short periods of time, don't make them wait for stuff you promise, don't impose wishful thinking, and don't force them to do wasteful work. So these are just simple examples of understanding what it means to be a lean thinker and respect people and respect for the people that are basically in your supply chain, the people that work and deliver product and services to you, and the people that you work for and you deliver products and services to. And those people you'll find are typically pretty close. They're right down the hall in large enterprise or maybe on the 3rd floor. But those are our customers, and they serve as a proxy between us and our end users, and our goal is to help them achieve their mission. Kaizen. There was a time back when I labeled this continuous improvement, and that's what it means, but continuous improvement doesn't quite have the punch. Kaizen is continuous improvement now. Kaizen is continuous improvement with a little kick in the pants that says we have a constant sense of danger. We're in a competitive environment, almost assuredly. Almost all of you are. Those that aren't, perhaps you're in nonprofit situations, still have the ability to provide more and better value. So Kaizen is a mindset. It's championed by everyone. Certainly has to be part of the leadership mindset, and it has to be built into the model. And just like Scrum builds in its retro, we're going to build Kaizen right into our model. Principles of product development flow. I think it is really a great thing to be standing here now in 2014 and have some foundational principles that we didn't have 4 and 5 years ago. And I can't go through them here. I wish I could. I will tell you this, that when released 3.0, it was too big a batch size. We should have applied some WIP constraints because it was too big a batch for us to achieve.
We learned a lot.
We did. And we did get feedback. That's the good news, is that we have designed for that. So we got great feedback on 3.0 in process, but it was still a big job. Decentralized control. Why? So you can go faster. Right? What does it mean to be empowered? It means that an individual can make decisions. Why does that matter? A, it increases their satisfaction, increases their contribution, and allows decisions to be made much more quickly. Now, as we move forward and think about the constructs, nothing beats an Agile team. That's what brought me here. I don't remember exactly, 2000, 2001, I learned XP first, and then I learned Scrum. I had the opportunity to serve as a coach for a couple of smaller teams, smaller as in 20 and 30 people. I was their Agile coach, and when we installed these practices, we immediately saw results. We saw employee engagement go up, we saw defects go down, and I thought that is a really cool model. So what do those teams do? They deliver valuable software increments every 2 weeks, empowered, self-organizing, and self-managing. And we mean that, right? If we're trying to implement work at scale and Agile at scale, we can't be looking behind ourselves all the time and say, hey, I need to go sort out the issues for that team. They need to be able to manage themselves. We have to provide some amount of some guidance, right? Some vision, some architecture, a little bit of intentionality, and user experience, because we don't want our users to navigate from module to module or from feature to feature and have a whole different user experience just because we weren't thoughtful enough about our planning. Model based primarily on Scrum project management and what I like to call is XP-inspired technical practices. And then value delivery via user stories. What we mean by that is that user stories is the main currency for Agile development because they bring the user to bear on the problem set. And in case you didn't already know this, here's a reminder: you can't scale crappy code. Poor code added to poor code added to poor code is basically a nightmare. You have an impossible mission on that point. You are on a fool's errand if we think we can take relatively, poor code quality and poor coding practices, poor everything, poor standards, naming conventions, check-in, check-out procedures, continuous integration environment, poor test capability, lack of test capability, lack of responsibility for tests. None of that scales. So we focus on what we call the big three of 6 key elements here: Agile architecture, continuous integration, what we describe as test first. And we also describe refactoring and pair work and collective ownership, because those are also things that allow the teams with additional scalability, higher velocity, and a higher ability to innovate. So we don't start by saying, let's have a meeting about X. Let's have a meeting about X and make sure that we understand what our current code quality is and what we're going to do to improve on that. And again, another little vignette as I woke up from my Saturday morning jet lag reading Deming. A system must be managed, it will not manage itself. Left to themselves, components become selfish, competitive, independent profit centers, and thus destroy the system. The secret is cooperation between components toward the aim of the organization. That's a pretty brilliant thought. And I like to remind myself that there are 2 systems that work here. The first system is a subject system. The thing we're building, the CRM system, or the trading system, or the geophysical data collection satellite. That's built of components, and if that's not managed, the components will become selfish. I need to do a fast sort. Great, I'll suck everything into memory and chew up all the resources to do that, and everybody else is left, waiting for service. And then there's also the organization. If we're siloed, or even if we're in Agile teams and we say, hey, everyone, optimize, they will. But we have to understand that what we're optimizing is throughput through the system, not the individual teams or departments. So we've got a responsibility to manage this complexity that we're producing. Most of that we achieve or describe, if you will, at the program level. And the Scrum model, the Agile model, is really pretty simple from a paradigm standpoint. It's called plan together, commit, execute, and adapt. We do exactly the same thing at the program level, and that's why we know that we're off to a good Agile place, because we take the basic pattern of plan, do, check, and adapt, and build that right into the model. Working system increments every 2 weeks. So it's not enough that the team has good working software. It has to work at the system level, and we try to do that through a pull event called the system demo. Hey everybody, demo's coming up. Let's grab your code. Let's pull it in. Let's make sure that it's integrated, and let's work together to make sure that we have a system. A single backlog. I think a backlog is one brilliant little invention. I don't know if it started in Scrum or if there's a root before that, but I'd rather have a backlog of things to think about than a requirements document of things that are overly thought through and are probably missing a couple of key elements of things that I'd really like to do. Common sprint links and common estimating, common alignment, face-to-face release planning. So the Agile Manifesto states very clearly, best form of communication is face-to-face. We build on that. Because we're bigger, it means that we have even more communication challenges. So how did we possibly think we could fall back on less efficient means like documents? So face-to-face release planning is a hallmark of Agile teams. And we use a slightly different description to describe system behaviors here. We talk about features and benefits in a language that's natural for us and our customer, far more so than the user story is, which by definition is a relatively small thing. Not a bad thing, but it's a small thing because I can get it done in the context of a single sprint. And unless there's any confusion about the model here, we believe in the principles of cadence and synchronization. I think that the more we come to understand large-scale development, we realize that synchronous integration points are the things that really drive the conversion of uncertainty to knowledge. When we integrate, we know. So we want synchronous integration points, but we can't let that necessarily dictate our release cycle, because our customer may or may not want a synchronous delivery point. So we need to separate those 2 concerns, and we develop on Cadence with these things called PI. and we deliver our releases based upon demand whenever our market demands. So it doesn't matter if that's a major release or an upgrade or whatever. Let's decouple those two things, and let's make routine that which can be routine, planning and execution, and then we'll have our energy to focus on the releases as we need to. But as we scale up, we have to stay lean. We have to not kill the goose that laid the golden egg. So Scaled Agile Framework is not orthogonal to Agile. It's not independent of Agile. It doesn't reduce Agile. It is fully based upon Agile. And lean thinking is a set of principles that allow us to make sure that we keep those queues and backlogs short, and we keep our responsiveness to market needs. And there we understand, again, with this kind of same little Deming paradigm, that the system is a network of interdependent components. All our programs will operate together, generally. And that system must have an aim. So what is the aim? We express that aim through the portfolio. And the biggest change, I think, in version 3 from version 2.5 is we found a more expressive and I think more comprehensive way to express the flow of value through the portfolio. And you can see that as strategic themes which connect the portfolio vision to the enterprise business strategy. And you see value streams, which are first-class citizens in the model. You'll see, if you click on budgets, a lean agile approach to budgeting. It's not going to be everybody's favorite approach, because it basically it doesn't appreciate project cost accounting or project in general. It leans towards larger budgets allocated at a higher level of the organization and providing for decentralized decision making within that. There's a Kanban system there that provides for portfolio visibility and WIP limits. If you think about work in process limits as a way to increase throughput, and that's the way I would like you to think about them, excuse me, not as simple a limitation of what we're doing, the way to increase flow and increase throughput. Well, where would we ever want to have higher throughput or not overload the system than at the portfolio level? So of all the places they matter there the most. And, you know, we have to stitch together our enterprise architectures here too. We want to do common things in a common manner. We want to have as few platforms as possible. We want to implement single sign-on with one technology, not 5, almost certainly. And we want to focus on objective metrics, working software. We respect that those in program portfolio management have certain requirements and certain obligations to understand what the status of the program is. And we have to help them do their jobs. But we want to do that not with indirect milestones and reports. We want to do that with working code. So we kind of changed the model from, you know, a push model to a here's your reports that you've asked for based upon the SDL, Software Development Lifecycle Guidance, to a pull model, which is, you want to see how we're doing? Come on down. Come to the system demo, or certainly come to the inspect and adapt session, where we'll show you what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what our customers think of our solution. And up here, as we think about these larger initiatives, we use this word epics. And we describe various types of business epics, like I simply need to implement single sign-on across my whole suite of projects. Or maybe an architectural epic that I saw not too long ago is convert all the back office servers to 64 bits. Well, customers don't see that directly, but it's a really big job, and you can't ignore that stuff. You can't just wake up and hope that you're running on 64 bits. That's intentional work. That's an element of intentional architecture. And as I mentioned, our program portfolio management function, this may be a team, it may not be a team. It may be a group of individuals potentially with, you know, from different departments and different responsibilities. But certainly we understand that strategy has to be centralized to a large point, right? The enterprise needs to follow the strategic vectors that are laid out by the fiduciaries and the key stakeholders who determine that course of action. Funding has to happen too. We have to fund to the strategy. We have to understand that we're doing that. Many get a big assist from program management. And finally, there's the governance element. So when we think about PPM, we think about those 3 key functions. And independent of Agile, those have to exist. Programs are managed. Might be some question as to how they get managed. Governance matters, because governance is the feedback on spend, and strategy and investment funding matters as well. But here you see the patterns that we apply. We like to think about lean and agile budgeting. Think about managing the demand and continuous flow of value rather than starting and stopping. You know, no more starting and stopping for value streams. The compass of strategic themes, how we align to the business. Decentralized rolling wave planning is how we do our planning. Agile estimating and planning gets us out of the work breakdown structure and the task hour level detail too early a time. Self-managing agile release trains, they know what their mission is. They have people that are empowered. They have budget authority, and they have the decision-making authority for content. And then lastly, governance, not based upon a report. Well, maybe it's a report, but that report contains objective, fact-based measures and milestones. And finally, the last topic here comes back to management and comes back to leadership. And I was struck by this quote a year or so back from Drucker. Workers are knowledge workers if they know more about the work they perform than their bosses. Think about that for a second. So maybe you're in a position where you manage knowledge workers who all know more about their work than you do and probably are just as bright as you are. Hopefully, if you've been a really, really good boss, you've hired people that are even brighter than you. So you can't outthink these people. What do we know about them? We know that they're best placed to make decisions about how to perform their work. Who knows more than they do? We respect them because of their capability and because that's a requirement for their satisfaction. They have to have a degree of autonomy, right? They have to be led, not managed. Nobody likes being told what to do. Even my daughter's dog doesn't like being told what to do. But it's okay to provide a mission and a sense of direction. But how that work gets performed, that lies with the knowledge workers. And innovation isn't by accident. Innovation is a continuing part of the work, the task, and the responsibility of knowledge workers. So those are our folks. So how do we rethink, those of us on this webinar who are managers, how do we rethink our roles and responsibilities? Well, this is a deep topic, right? We can't do that in 45 minutes or anything like it. And we've worked hard over the last few years to try to synthesize a few things. Number one, we know that we have that responsibility. The responsibility for success of the initiative lies in the hands of the existing executives and managers of the organization. Nobody else can do it. Your Agile working group can't do it. Your consultants can't do it. I can't do it. The only people that can do it are the people that have the responsibility for the systems that the workers work in. And we describe in SAFE, and you can read more about this on the website, 4 primary, principles or philosophies. Number one, take a systems view. Know the bigger picture. Know how the teams need to interact. Know how the system interacts. Know how the system interacts with its environment. Embrace the Agile Manifesto. Not optional. If you read the manifesto and your organization says, well, we don't really believe that, or we can't really support that, and the value system is not our value system, then don't start down this path because you won't be successful. This is simply the baseline for the belief system. Implement product development flow, another pretty tall order. It's tough to think about smaller batch sizes moving through the system, and it's tough to truly decentralize control. It's tough to understand the optimizations that are involved in what you optimize for, and it's tough to understand that there's no right answer. That instead there's a series of optimizations that you do to implement flow. And lastly but not least, unlock the intrinsic potential of knowledge workers. They have that potential. As managers and leaders, we can't really do much about that. They bring it with them. Most of the things we can do are counterproductive. It's pretty easy to countermand that intrinsic potential. It's pretty easy to get in their way and to reduce their engagement. But really leveraging their intrinsic potential is where we and they get the best benefits. And there's no downside to that. There's no downside to workers who like their work better, who contribute more, and who innovate and who help the company achieve its mission. So as we've described here, we get to build on Agile teams. That's a really cool thing. Didn't have that a decade or so ago. Now we do. But the foundation of Lean is leadership, and that means that you are the foundation of SAFE. Those of you who are listening to this webinar and trying to understand the new way of working, success lies in your hands. And we have a few steps that we could describe. The framework is there for you. It's not hidden. There's no secret sauce. It's there. You can read it. You can read the book, Agile Software Requirements, and you can build your own expertise with training and certification. And that's our business model, by the way. The framework is free. Well, training, not so much. Everybody has to feed their family. And then the Agile Release Train is that program level. This is the value delivery program set. This is where people work together, teams work together, deliver value of a certain type. And of course, you can get help from experts here. ScaleDagile.com, ScaleDagilePartners.com. There are 30 or 40 partners now that can provide services to you. If you're a larger enterprise, you're almost certainly going to want to reach out to something like that. And also join the community at ScaleDagile.com. If you become an SPC, there's a great community there, which has many, hundreds and hundreds of people that have actively discussed their challenges in the real world environment, and we get new ideas there every day. From an implementation perspective, I've often described and sometimes been criticized for the fact that we don't talk much about implementation. Well, we have a big job. We're pretty happy developing method and practice. At the same time, we have a model that's conceptually simple but hard to execute. And the steps in the model are number one, you're going to need people who know the new way of working, and they're going to either work for you directly or they're going to work for some of your partners. So let's train those people and put their feet inside your organization. We also train all the leaders. I think it was some years back that I decided that I wasn't going to enter any more large-scale transformations where the leadership didn't think it was their responsibility and weren't really ready to acquire the knowledge they needed to be successful. And then we train the Agile release trains too. If they're already scrumming, then some amount of baselining will get them engaged in face-to-face release planning and drive them towards the business results. Down at the bottom, you can see what our role is methodology, is method and courseware, training and certify. You can see our partners role, consulting, coaching, training, tooling, a variety of tooling partners. And then we have a product called Enterprise Safe for those larger enterprises that need to customize or modify or perhaps add some specificity to certain key issues. Might be, security or various standards. Then you might want to document that more thoroughly. That's available to you in Enterprise Safe. So as we conclude here, references, ScaleDagileFramework.com, pretty easy to find that. Just looking at that, we have 50,000 people now actively surfing the website every month or so. What else? The community at ScaleDagilePartners.com, and I think you can read the rest because, as we mentioned, this particular briefing is available to you on the web.
Yeah, ScaleDagileFramework.com/foundation. So thank you, Dean. That was a great summary of foundations of the Scaled Agile framework, and we look forward to hearing your feedback and participating in your large-scale enterprise-wide transformations.
And speaking for all of us here at Scaled Agile, we look forward to seeing you in the field.
Yeah.
That's where the fun is.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, everyone.